A young girl lay thereon, covered with a cloak. She was asleep, and the light of the lantern fell upon her features. A fair, sweet, and honest country face was revealed, reposing in a nest of wavy chestnut hair. It was between pretty and beautiful. Though her eyes were closed, one could easily imagine the light necessarily shining in them as the culmination of the luminous workmanship around. The groundwork of the face was hopefulness, but over it now lay like a foreign substance a film of anxiety and grief. The scarlet of her lips had not had time to abate, and just now it appeared still more intense by the absence of the neighbouring and more transient colour of her cheek. The lips frequently parted with a murmur of words. She seemed to belong rightly to a madrigal, to require viewing through rhyme and harmony. One thing at least was obvious: she was not made to be looked at thus. The lips then parted with something of anticipation, something more of doubt, and her several thoughts and fractions of thoughts, as signalled by the changes on her face, were exhibited by the light to the utmost nicety. An ingenuous, transparent life was disclosed, as if the flow of her existence could be seen passing within her. He told her that she was the joy of his life, and if she'd consent, he would make her his wife. She could not refuse him to church, so they went. Young Will was forgot, and young Sue was content, and then she was kissed and set down on his knee. No man in the world was so loving as he. His daily life was of a curious, microscopic sort, his whole world being limited to a circuit of a few feet from his person. His familiars were creeping and winged things, and they seemed to enroll him in their band. Bees hummed around his ears with an intimate air, and tugged at the heath and furze flowers at his side in such numbers as to weigh them down to the sod. The strange amber-coloured butterflies which Egdon produced, and which were never seen elsewhere, quivered in the breadth of his lips, alighted upon his bowed back, and sported with the glittering point of his hook as he flourished it up and down. Tribes of emerald-green grasshoppers leaped over his feet, falling awkwardly on their backs, heads, or hips, like unskilful acrobats, as chance might rule, or engaged themselves in noisy flirtations under the fern fronds with silent ones of homely hue. Huge flies, ignorant of larders and wire netting, and quite in a savage state, buzzed about him without knowing that he was a man. In and out of the fern dells, snakes glided in their most brilliant blue and yellow guise, it being the season immediately following the shedding of their old skins, when their colours are brightest. Litters of young rabbits came out from their forms to sun themselves upon hillocks, the hot beams blazing through the delicate tissue of each thin-fleshed ear, and firing it to a blood-red transparency in which the veins could be seen. None of them feared. Of a boy who used magic. His reasons were sound, but the outcome was tragic. Look at him, stupefied, trapped in a bubble. Allow me to outline the cause of the trouble. Rupert Shelley, for that was this young fellow's name, was like other children, but not quite the same. He'd gladly have faced any vampire or ghoul than the venomous creatures who plagued him at school. Here was a place of morose introspection, where books offered little by way of protection, till one day a new face appeared in the class. Flaming-haired Jill, her pale skin smooth as glass, eyes blue as sapphires, a nose like a kitten. Naturally, Rupert was utterly smitten. Books on the subject of girls were quite charming, though some of the pictures inside were alarming. With his dreams and ambitions consumed by romance, his ghoulish companions scarce rated a glance. The decor, once eerie, now whimsical, quaint, a virtual shrine to true love's patron saint. In time, the day came for which Rupert had pined, and so, with his heart and his card intertwined, he stood before Jill as if floating in space. Then suddenly, everything fell into place. But girls can be fickle and love can be cruel, as Rupert discovered the next day at school. With a turnabout worthy of Jekyll and Hyde, Jill, quite transformed, took poor Rupert aside to inform him quite coldly that they would now part. Thus, breaking their tryst, she fragmented his heart. With his feelings in shreds, not to mention his pride, in his room Rupert sat, and he desperately tried to erase every trace of the hurt, but he couldn't. He prayed it would fade, but it stubbornly wouldn't. Just then he remembered a spell he'd once read in a volume of magic he kept by the bed. A strange incantation he couldn't construe, but he thought to himself, what harm could it do? Ut cor meungula continuatur. Spells can be potent, this more than others. To Rupert's surprise, not to mention his mother's, in class, the malevolent taunts of his peers were now indistinct mumbles that fell on deaf ears. Yet this wondrous power was lost on our hero, his range of emotions diminished to zero. Cocooned unhygienically, life became bleak. Each dull day predictable, week after week, no echo of sadness nor spark of elation, locked up with his memories, robbed of sensation. A poor end to this tale, I'm sure you'll concur. But hope's not yet lost for our sorry young sir. On the point of accepting his wretched existence, passively gazing on life from a distance, dimly he noticed a girl drawing closer, her head in a tone that appeared to engross her. Suddenly, the bubble compressed, and something like lightning shot right through his chest. As the old saying goes, every tale has two sides, but you might be surprised that it also applies to enchantment, for hidden in each